This video is about the co-teaching strategy, station teaching. This approach divides instructional content into segments. And learning stations are then created and students can rotate to each station to learn all content segments. In this example, content is broken into two segments and students are divided into two groups. Mrs. Criswell, the social studies teacher, will teach at one station, and I, the science teacher, will teach at the other. Students will rotate stations to learn about each of the parts of the content. There are many benefits to this approach, including smaller student to teacher ratio, teachers can cover more material in a class period, and fewer discipline problems occur because students are engaged and can be separated from other students who are typically distracting. Proper planning is essential for station teaching to be effective. When Mrs. Criswell and I met to plan, we considered not only the content which would be taught, but also the room configuration, whether the students or the teachers would rotate to the stations, which students would be in which group, and planning two activities that would end at the same time. Mrs. Criswell's social studies class is in the middle of a unit in which they are exploring ways the physical environment can promote or limit human activities. So since I teach science, we decided to make connections to the science related to this issue to create the two learning stations. Yesterday, students were assigned an article to read for homework so they could review the background information about the pollution of the Danube River in Europe. During today's lesson, students will review how the Danube River was polluted and what made it difficult to trace the pollution across boundaries. After Mrs. Criswell gets the class started by reviewing the learning target and reviewing the homework assignment, students will begin working in groups. One half of the class will complete a dilution lab with me, which explores the science behind the article on the Danube pollution, while the other group completes a mapping activity with Mrs. Criswell and describes causes and impacts pollution has had on people in that region.
Or is this clear?
Okay, fire, they could have lost their job if they were fishermen. They couldn't drink it anymore. Mary? Yes, the fish are dying, the wildlife is dying. So it's going to cause some huge impacts. And we're going to build on this some more tomorrow.
They put the fires out because they keep on making more fire.
Okay.
We couldn't see the cyanide anymore in which well? Around about? 6 or 7. A lot of us got 6 or 7, right? But do you think that cyanide was still, or the red food coloring was still in the water?
Yes.
Why?
Because it broke up into small pieces.
Okay, we probably got diluted. Very good. It's still there, but it's so diluted we can't see it. Okay.
Let's talk about this word transboundary again. Whenever we hear transboundary, that means something is crossing a boundary. Did the pollution just stay in Romania?
No.
No. It impacted, anybody remember how many countries did it impact right away? Will? 4. And then what body of water did it leak into? The Black Sea. So it's not just affecting one group of people or one location, but it's spreading.
Mrs. Criswell and I met to reflect on our experience with station teaching. The first issue we both brought up was the initial awkwardness of trying to teach our groups without our voices competing. The room could be configured differently to address this, but since I was only with Mrs. Criswell for 1 out of the 7 periods of her day, we had to come up with a configuration that would not only work for our station teaching, but also be quickly rearranged in a way that she needed for the rest of the day, so that she could complete both activities with the students on her own. We were glad we decided to use the timer to help us keep track of time, and the students switched groups quickly with only minor problems. I could have shown you this, but it was not recorded. I thought I pressed the button on the camera to record, but apparently it was already recording, so when I pressed the button, it placed the camera on standby instead. Sorry. Lastly, during our planning phase, we pored over room configuration and focused on making the activities so engaging that students would not want to turn around to see what the other students are doing and ask us, "When am I going to do the other activity?" So Mrs. Criswell and I noticed that all of our students were on task in our groups. Almost no students turned around to see the other group, and none of the students asked about what was going on with the other group. So overall, we felt this co-teaching approach was successful, and we measured our success by the accuracy of student answers recorded in their interactive notebooks before, during, and after their station activities, and also during the review of learning targets at the end of class. We contribute this success to the amount of planning that went into the activities to meet the learning targets, arranging the materials for ease of use and cleanup, configuring the room using the timer, and communicating very clear expectations to our students.